How do blood transfusions work? Slow version. In 1891, Dr. William Halstead rushed to help his sister Minnie, who had hemorrhage after childbirth. He quickly inserted a needle into his arm with the draw's own blood and transferred it to her. After a few uncertain minutes, she began to recover. Halstead didn't know how lucky they'd gotten. His transfusion only worked because he and his sister happened to have the same blood type, something that isn't guaranteed even among close relatives. Blood type happened to be discovered by Halstead's time, though people have been experimenting with transfusion for centuries, mostly unsuccessfully. In 1667, a French physician named Jean-Baptiste Denis became the first to try the technique on a human. Denis transfused sheep's blood into Antoine Marouin, a man likely suffering from psychosis, in hope that would reduce his symptoms. Afterward, Marouin was in good spirit, but after a second transfusion, he developed fever, severe pain in his lower back, intense burning in his arm, and he urinates a thick black liquid. Though nobody knew it at the time, these were signs of dangerous immune response unfolding inside his body. This immune response starts with the production of proteins called antibodies, which distinguish the body's own cell from intruder. They do so by recognizing the foreign proteins or antigens embedded in the intruder cell members. Antibodies latch onto the antigens, signaling other immune cells to attack and destroy the foreign cells. The destroyed cells are flushed from body in urine. In extreme cases, the massive breakdown of the cell causes the clot in the bloodstream that disrupts the flow of blood to vital organs, overload the kidneys, and cause organ failure. Fortunately, Denis' patient survived the transfusion, but after other cross-species transfusion proved fatal, the procedure was outlawed across Europe, falling out of favor for several centuries. It wasn't until 1991 that Austrian physician Karl Manstarian discovered blood types, the crucial steps in the success of human blood transfusions. He noticed that when different types were mixed together, they formed clots. This happens when antibodies latch on the cell with the foreign antigens, causing blood cells to clump together. But if the donor cells are the same blood type as the recipient cells, the donor cell won't be fled for destruction and won't form clumps. By 1997, doctors were mixing together a small amount of blood before transfusing it. If there are no clumps, the type are a match. This enabled them to save thousands of lives, laying the foundation for modern transfusions. Up to this point, all transfusions had occurred in real time, directly between two individuals. That's because blood began to clot almost immediately after coming into contact with air, a defense mechanism to prevent excessive blood loss after injury. In 1914, researchers discovered that the chemical sodium citrate stopped blood coagulation by removing the calcium necessary for clot formation. Saturated blood could be stored for later use, the first step in making large-scale blood transfusion possible. In 1916, A pair of American scientists found an even more effective anticoagulant called heparin, which works by deactivating an enzyme that enables clotting. We still use heparin today. At the same time, American and British researchers discovered polymer machines that could transport donor blood onto the battlefield of World War I. Combined with new discovered heparin, medics safely stored and preserved liters of blood, wheeling it directly onto the battlefield to transfuse wounded soldiers. After the war, this crude portable box would become inspiration for the modern-day blood bank, a fixture of hospitals around the world. One more with normal speed. In 1881, Dr. William Halsted rushed to help his sister Minnie, who was hemorrhaging after childbirth. He quickly inserted a needle into his arm, withdrew his own blood, and transferred it to her. After a few uncertain minutes, she began to recover. Halsted didn't know how lucky they'd gotten. His transfusion only worked because he and his sister happened to have the same blood type, something that isn't guaranteed even among close relatives. Blood type had been discovered by Halsted's time, though people have experimented with transfusion for centuries, mostly unsuccessful. In 1667, a French physician named Jean-Baptiste Denis became the first to try the technique on humans. Denis transfused sheep's blood into Anton Marot, a man likely suffering from psychosis, in the hopes that it would reduce his disease. Afterward, Marion was a good spirit, but after a second transfusion, he developed a fever, severe pain in his lower back, intense burning in his arm, and he urinated a thick blood liquid. Though nobody knew it at the time, these were the signs of dangerous immune response unfolding inside his body. This immune response started with the production of proteins called antibodies, which distinguish the body's own cells from intruders. They do so by recognizing the foreign proteins or antigens embedded in the intruder cell members. Antibodies latch on to antigen, signaling other immune cells to attack and destroy the foreign cells. The destroyed cells are flushed from the body in urine. In extreme cases, the massive breakdown of cells causing the clots in the bloodstream that disrupt the flow of blood to vital organs, overload the kidneys, and cause organ failure. Fortunately, Denis' patients survived the transfusion, but after other cross-species transfusion proved a failure, the procedure was outlawed across Europe, falling out of favor for several centuries. It was until 1991 that Australian physician Carter Lanter discovered the blood types, the crucial step in the success of human and human blood transfusions. He noticed that when different types were mixed together, they formed clots. This happens when antibodies latch on cells with foreign antigens, causing blood cells to clump together. But if donor cells are the same blood type as the cells, the donor cell would be flattered for destruction and won't for clot. By 1997, doctors were mixing together a small amount of blood before transfusing. If there were no clumps, the type would match. This enabled them to save thousands of lives, laying the foundation for modern transfusions. Up to this point, all transfusions have occurred in real time, directly between two individuals. That's because blood began to clog almost immediately after coming into contact with air, a defense mechanism to prevent excess blood loss after injury. In 1940, researchers discovered that the chemical sodium citrate stopped blood coagulating by removing calcium necessary for clot formation. Citrate blood could be stored for later use, the first step in making large-scale blood transfusion possible. In 1960, a pair of American scientists found an even more effective anticoagulant called heparin, which works by deactivating enzyme that enable clot. We still use heparin today. At the same time, American and British researchers developed affordable machines that could transfer donor blood onto a battlefield of World War I. Combined with the newly discovered heparin, made it safely stored and preserved the liter of blood, willing directly on the battlefield to transfuse onto soldiers. After the war, this crude portable box would become the inspiration for the modern-day blood bag, a fixture of hospitals around the world. The video what I watched today is talking about the blood transfusion and how this works. Blood transfusion was discovered coincidentally. The man tried to save his sister who bleeding after having birth, so he just connected his blood to her, and then they was lucky because they have the same blood type, so his sister survived after having blood transfusions from her brother. But if different type of bloods have transfusion, then it's very feasible because blood tends to make the clot, so its clots its clots have the possibility to block the vein. Then finally it can affect to failure to other organs. But I can remember exactly the year, but until that time, people don't know we have the different kind of blood types. After that, people found we have the 4 type of blood types. Then before blood transfusion, doctor tried to put the blood in a one section and then just to wait the result whether it have the clot or not. If different type of blood didn't make any clots, it means they can do blood transfusions. Then some scientists discovered the anticoagulant, which means remove some enzyme not to make the clot. Then after finding this medication, people can save more live because people can keep the blood which is not be clogged, so they can keep it to send the World War one soldier. Yes, that's what I watched today's video, and it was very interesting. Thank you.